Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Napoleon Total, and today we're back with another Enlisted video. Today we'll be doing a guide on the Stutzkampfflugzeugen, or the Ju-87, also known as the Stuka. We're going to be doing all the variants of the Stuka in-game and discuss the history and in-game tips and tricks to how you use the legendary Stuka. So let's get started with the video, and thank you for all your support. Let's get started with the history. Like with all weapons, or in this case a vehicle, we have to discuss the history. The Ju-87 or Stuka, its principal designer was Hermann Pullman, who had the opinion of any dive bomber need to be simple and robust. This led to many innovations, such as retractable undercarriage, which is disregarded in favor for one of the Stuka's most distinctive features, and it has a splat undercarriage. Pullman continued to carry out developments and adding his ideas to those of Palf, who was later killed in a flying accident while testing the Ju-87. That said, he also produced Palf obviously produced the Ju-48, which underwent testing in 29th of September 1928. The military version of the Ju-48 was designated as the Ju-47. When the Nazis came to power, the Stuka design was given priority. Despite initial competition from Henschel and the German Aviation Ministry, the Nazis turned to the design of Pullman of Junkers. Despite the trials, the K-47, which was the Ju-K-47, was introduced, and double vertical stabilizers were given to the rear gunner to give the better field of view. The main was sent to the most destructive feature of the Ju-87, and so essentially it will be given the gull wings that we see on the Ju-87. The Ju-48 designation DI-TOR was designated with the BMW 132 engine. The machine was also fitted with dive brakes and dive testing. The aircraft was given a good evaluation and excellent flying characteristics. All the information was about the Ju-48. For those that do not know what the Ju-48 was, it is essentially an earlier version of the Ju-87 Stuka. That said, all that information is useless, except for the fact that you have to realize most of the Ju-48's characteristics were later taken over to use on the Stuka. The design of the Ju-87 had begun built in 1933 as part of the Stutzbomber program. The Ju-87 was then powered with the British Rolls-Royce Kensal engine. Yes, a British engine on a Stuka. The first Ju-87 prototype was built by AB Flogberg in Sweden and secretly brought to Germany in late 1934. It was then completed in April of 1938, but due to inadequate strength of the airframe, construction took until October 1935. The most complete Junkers 87 took part of its maiden flight on the 17th of September 1935. After some engine changes and pilot death due to some crashes, the Ju-87 was then accepted into service from the help of various pilots who test-flied the plane, and from help via Hermann Göring, the Reichsminister later Reichsminister, but currently the head of the Luftwaffe. And let's get on to characteristics, because the history part, if I talk too much, I'm pretty sure people are going to get bored. So let's go to characteristics. The Junkers Ju-87 is one of the most interesting, if not the most iconic, dive bombers in World War II. Therefore, we have to talk about the characteristics, and that makes it so infamous. It has a single engine with all-metal cannon for monoplane. It had a fixed undercarriage, which means that the bomb is where they put the bomb. It had carried a two-person crew. The main construction material was duranium, and exterior coverings made the duranium sheets. Part of the requiring to make a strong construction, such as the wing flaps, were made out of aluminum alloy containing titanium, so the Ju-87 has a lot of metals. The Ju-87 was also fitted with detachable hatches and removed covering to aid in maintenance and overhaul. The designers avoided welding as much as possible, preferred molding and casting parts instead, and the reason is because that you do not want your wings to literally fly off, or rip off in the case during a dive. Therefore, a casting made the airframe stronger. Large airframe sections were interchanged as a complete unit, which increased the speed of repair of the Stuka. It was able to withstand a speed of 600 600 kilometers per hour or 370 miles per hour, and a maximum level of speed of 340 kilometers per hour and 210 miles per hour at near ground level, and it had a flying weight of 4,300 kilograms or 500 pounds. Performance in the diving attack was enhanced by introduction of diving brakes under each wing, which allowed the Ju-87 to maintain constant speed and allow the pilot to steady the aim. It also prevented the crew from suffering extreme G-force. And for those who don't know, G-force is essentially when you go down in a dive during a plane, or you do something like if you go too fast in a plane, you're starting to have blackouts, and that's the effect of G-force. That is my best way to put it. For those who don't really know what's G-force. High acceleration during the pullout from the dive also cause G-force. Another interesting situation about the Ju-87 is the sirens. These sirens were mounted on the Stuka. They were iconic in all major war films, i.e. Dunkirk and the Battle of Britain. The problem was that back in the day, the pilots hated them or didn't like them. The reason for that is that because not only are they heavy, but the sirens literally can be torn off when they are in the dive. Hence, it was not only really liked, and it also slowed the speed of the dive. So yeah, pilots didn't really like them. It only had a brief introduction in the Stuka, and it was then removed. That said, all of this said is a brief introduction of a Stuka. If I were once again to talk too much, which I can easily go on for hours about the Stuka, you guys are gonna probably be bored. So let's move on to the in-game stats, which most of you are just straight outright waiting for. Finally, we are the most interested part of the Stuka, the stats in-game. There are many variants of the Stuka in real life. However, because for game purposes and for history purposes, I am not going to be talking about every variant of the Stuka, although I would like to talk about a certain variant of the Stuka. But that said, let's just get on to the first variant of the Stuka, and that is the Ju-87 B2. The Ju-87B, or B, variant was the series of first mass-produced variants. The first production version was the Ju-87B1, which was considerably large engine and complete redesigned fuselage and landing gear. The new design was then tested in Spain, and it proved its abilities there. The production was then ramped up to 60 per month. As a result, by the outbreak of World War I, the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, had 336 Ju-87Bs on hand. The B1s were also fitted with sirens driven by the propellers. Then the B2 was introduced, and that followed some improvements and were built in several variants, which included ski-equipped versions, and on the other hand, a tropical operation kit called the Ju-87B2 Tropical. The Regia Aeronautica, the Italian Royal Air Force, which received B2s and named them Piscicallo, while other went to the members of the Axis, including Hungary, Bulgaria, Romania. The B2 also has an oil hydraulic system for closing the cowling flaps, and this will be continued in later designs. For those that are wondering what the in-game version is, the Ju-87B2 has the following. It has a one-man crew, which is weird. I thought you would be getting a two-man crew in the back. Notice all of these stats are for a 1-star Ju-87B2, so yeah, we're not going to be using a 4-stat. For armament, we have a 250 kilogram bomb, one 250 kilogram bomb. We have two 7.92 machine guns, of which we have 1,000 ammunition for 2 machine guns. We have 450 kilogram bombs, and yeah, a maximum speed of 419 kilometers per hour, maximum climb rate of 15.92 meters per second. Best full turn is 17.11 seconds. Available upgrades includes plane cover modifications and yada yada yada. Honestly, this is probably one of the best versions of the B2, and in terms of the early game. But yes, that's it for the B2. Let's move on to the R version. The Ju-87R is a long-range version of the Ju-87B, also known as the Ju-87R. The latter being abbreviated for the R being abbreviated for Reichsweite, or long range. This was primarily intended for anti-shipping missions, and the Ju-87R had a B-series airframe with additional oil tanks and fuselage to make it used for long range. To prevent overload conditions, the bomb carrying ability was often restricted to a single 250 kilogram bomb, or for those who don't know, a 550 pound bomb, and if the aircraft was fully loaded with fuel. That was only if the aircraft was fully loaded with fuel. The Ju-87R2 has the same airframe as the B-2 and is strengthened so it could withstand dives up to 600 kilometers per hour or 370 miles per hour. Due to an increase of overhaul weight by 700 kilograms or 150 pounds, the Ju-87R2 has 300 kilograms per hour, 19 miles slower than the Ju-87B. The Ju-87R2 has an increased range of advantage of 360 kilometers, 220 miles, and the R3 and the R4 were later variations of the R series. Only a few were built from the R3 and the R2. The R3 and the R4, but the most famous one is probably the R2. It's the long-range version. In terms of stats, it literally has 1 500 kilogram bomb, 2 7.92 machine guns, has a maximum climb of 421 kilograms per hour, maximum climb rate of 16.65 meters per second. Best turn is 16.81. Honestly, I really don't like this, but anyway, this Ju-87R2 is available in Tunisia, while the B-2 is available in, you guessed it, Moscow. Finally, let's move on to the D version. Despite the Stuka's vulnerability to enemy fighters having been exposed during the Battle of Britain, the Luftwaffe had no choice but to continue its development. There was no replacement aircraft in sight, which resulted in the Ju-87D series. The D series was introduced as aeronautical refit cockpit and better visions and space. Armor protection was increased for the glass, and a new dual-barrel 7.92 machine gun with an extremely high rate of fire this time was installed on the rear defensive position. Engine power was then increased again. Most surprisingly, the bomb-carrying ability was quadrupled from 500 kilograms in the B version to 1,800 kilograms or 4,000 pounds in the D version. Max load for short ranges, of course. This is not used for long range. A typical bomb load ranged from 500 kilograms to 1,200 kilograms, and the initial fuel capacity of the Ju-87D was raised to 800 liters, of which 780 liters was usable. By adding wing tanks, which retained the position to carry another 300 liters of tanklets. The test at Reichel Airfield revealed that it can make a possible flight duration of 2 hours and 15 minutes. With an extra 300 liters fuel tanks, it could achieve 4 hours of flight time. The Ju-87D5 was based on the D3 series and was unique in the Ju-87 series. It has a wing of 0.6 meters. It's 2 feet longer than other previous variants. The two 7.92 machine guns were exchanged for the powerful 20mm machine guns, aka the cannons, to better suit the aircraft's ground role fighter, or a heavy fighter / anti-tank role. Higher diving speeds was attained by 600 kilometers per hour, 400 miles per hour, to 2,000 meters to 6,600 feet. The range was recorded as 715 kilometers per hour, or 444 miles at ground level, and 835 kilometers, or 519 miles at 5,000 feet. That said, let's move on to the stats, and there's a whopping a lot. The Ju-87 D5 has a one-man crew, no surprise right there. It has one bomb, that being 250 kilogram bomb. It has a 20mm MG, or a cannon, of which it has 1,000 rounds. 450 kilogram bombs, so essentially the bomb load is the exact same as the B-2 variant of the Ju-87. But in terms of maximum speed, it can go 423 kilometers per hour, 12 meters per second in terms of climb rate. Best turn is 20 seconds. So this thing is the best out of all the Stukas in game. That said, if you really want to use the early game, the best early game Stuka is probably the Ju-87B2, but that said, let's go to tips and tricks, where I'll be talking more about the best Stuka. Now let me give you my tips and tricks for the Stuka. In my mind, the Stuka is a wonderful plane, and that is because the Stuka is the best starting plane for a new player who enters Enlisted. It is also a very good plane if you know how to use it correctly, and once again, the best learning plane in all of Enlisted. The reason why, because the Stuka has a lot of advantages and it has a lot of disadvantages, which works in favor for the new player. Every Stuka has its advantages for me. Obviously, the D5 and the D2 variants have a larger bomb load, but the R2 has a bigger bomb load, so yeah. In my mind, the R2 is probably the worst. And the reason why is because although it has a big bomb load, the bomb load, I'd rather have more bombs so I can kill more tanks. That said, terrain really matters, so in Tunisia, I say the R2 is the best in the situation. The rest of the Ju-87s are just as good as the R2, if not better. And yeah, now you might be wondering why the heck do I think this is a very good starting plane, and the reason is simple. The Ju-87 teaches you how to dive bomb. It is essentially a dive bomber. Like, if that isn't obvious by this video, then you have a problem. The Ju-87 is the perfect dive bomber and is the perfect plane to learn how to dive bomb. For those who don't know how to dive bomb, it's quite simple. When you start in the game, you essentially start at around 700 meters. If I'm not correct, in some maps you start at 600, some maps you start at 1,000. It really depends on the map, but usually you start at 700 meters. Rise up to 900 meters, and when you are within, well, start the ascent to 700 meters to 1,000 meters. You shouldn't be going below 750 meters in terms of height, or in terms of how high you are in the sky. In terms of altitude, what am I trying to say? In terms of altitude, go 750 meters, but do not pass 1,000 meters, and the reason could be obvious later on. Once you reach 700 to 1,000 meters in the air, and you are within 900 meters of the target, or the base, start your dive. And the reason why you do not go above 1,000 meters in terms of altitude is because if you dive at 900 meters above 1,000 meters in terms of altitude, then you're literally gonna dive bomb yourself back, and that's not a great idea. Essentially, what will happen if you do it the correct way, which is usually 800 meters in altitude, and you're within 900 meters of the target, you start your dive, and you will literally have a 60-degree dive on the target, and when you drop your bomb, it's going to be 100% accurate. Obviously, there is a catch, and that is if you know how to pull out, and if you do it correctly, you can refuel back to base. But if you don't, you end up crashing and killing yourself. That is why I say the Stuka is one of the best planes in terms of learning how to play the game. Once again, I'm going to recap what I just said in terms of dive bombing, so listen carefully. Start at, you literally will have to start at 750 meters, rise up to either 800 meters or at max 900 meters. If you go over that, that's going to be horrific for your own sake. Once you are within 900 meters at the target and you are at 800 meters in terms of altitude, start diving at a 60-degree angle, and after you start your dive, and when you found your target, drop the bomb and pull out. And that is literally how you dive bomb in the Stuka. Obviously, other planes are similar, so that is why I say the Stuka is one of the best starting planes in terms of how to fly. But yeah, that is the Stuka for you. In my mind, this is one of the best planes in terms of dive bombing, because historically it was essentially made to dive bomb. Like, this thing literally has everything going for it to dive bomb. That said, like its historical counterpart, you're going to be having a hard time against enemy fighters. But yeah, that is the Stuka for you, and I'm not done yet. Honestly, do I think Enlisted should add in more Stukas? Yes, I think the Enlisted should add in more Stukas. Which Stuka? I think in Berlin they should add the Ju-87 G1. For those that do not know what the G1 is, it is essentially the Stuka with 3.7 centimeter cannons. So this thing can literally take out T-34s with a bunch of shots. So that is the most fun, probably the most fun Stuka to use. But that said, yeah. That is pretty much it for this video. The last one, the last Stuka, is my personal preference, but that said, have a great day guys. That ends it for the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Now before you leave, I would like to thank you very much for watching this video. I would be honored if you could like and subscribe to the channel. Remember, more videos are coming out, so it is a good idea to click on that notification button. Anyways, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.